I always really liked film. Like when I was in high school, I think do you remember the DVD set that came out that was like the music video collection? It was like Michel Gondry and like Jonathan Glazer and like Chris Cunningham and like
Spike
these guys that
Jonze,
came,
right?
yeah, Spike Jonze, and that
Yeah, I
came
remember
out,
that
and I was
one.
like,
Did it have a
what?
guy on fire running? It was on the cover, I think.
Yes, yes, yes. That must have been the Spike Jonze one, right? For
Yeah.
I can't remember which video it was, but that was like a thing where I was like, oh, so like I see how I could like merge these sort of worlds. And I had this other friend of mine who was also into filmmaking. We were at the time both like majoring in both like physics and computer science or something really boring. And then we said like, oh, let's just do film as like our other kind of, it's not a major because it's high school, but like our other whatever curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just fell in love with it. And I just devoted 100% of my time into that. But I never thought of it as like a real career or anything like that. It was just like a hobby. And then when I went into the military, there is one division in the military in Israel, which is like, it's called the spokesman unit. It's basically like news. It's ENG news gathering. But what you do is you're with a camera and with a professional camera, and you have editors and sound people and all these things. And you could go and basically like, it's so relevant today, but even back then there was a war in Gaza, and they're like, they close it off for the press, but they're like, we're going to send in our people to film it. Now with all the politics around, I was never involved in any of that. I was just the person that goes in, films everything, gives the material over, and then there's other people that do all the, whatever, the propaganda and the censoring and all blah, blah, blah. But the point of the matter was, for me, it was like to get the material out there. So I was like, okay, this sounds like something. I'm 18 years old, I have 3 years now to serve. What do you want to do? They ask you like on the forum that you fill out, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I kind of like cameras. I like these kind of things. And then they were like, okay. They looked at it. They're like, thank you. Okay. No, we don't need you. You could go do court duty. So that's what I did. So they sent me for like 9 months to do the worst job in the world. I was like working in like a martial court in the West Bank. It was like, it was absolutely terrible. And through these 9 months, I kept fighting and fighting and fighting to get transferred over to this unit, which was probably that was like the defining point. This journey, which nobody could really understand except Israelis, I think, that went through this bureaucratic nightmare, which is dealing with the military over there. Mm-hmm. It was 9 months of a battle, and then they finally transferred me over to this unit to serve the rest of my service. And it was personally at the time, in the zeitgeist that I had at the time, was like fantastic. Do you know what I mean? I was in submarines, I was in helicopters, like I was overseas in Haiti during the earthquake, all these kind of things, like seeing all these wonderful things and photographing it and getting these really powerful, really resonant images. Like I remember a footage that I shot, screened on the news on CNN during the inauguration of President Obama, right? It was like side by side. And I was like, wow, people are actually seeing the stuff that I'm doing.
That's got to be mind-blowing.
Yeah, no. So it was really like, it was strong. And then after that time, when I was released from the army, this was 2009, when I got out of the military, I tried to continue in that trajectory. I worked for some news channels within Israel, but immediately they sent me, like when I went to the real news channel, they're like, oh, you don't, you're 21 years old, whatever. They put me on like court duty. So it was like a relapse. They sent me back to court duty, wait for this person to come out of court, wait for 3 hours for this guy to come out of his trial, and then like interview his lawyer. You know what I mean? So it was just like a talking head thing. That lasted about maybe 2 months. And then I quit from that job, and I was like, I can't do news anymore. I'm going to try my way into film. I want to do these things like Michel Gondry and Spike Jonze and these cool things that I once had. And then it was a journey from the start, and I worked my way through the camera department. Then I knew a few contacts that were like second ICs and focus pullers, and then I just kind of went up through commercials and films.
So on traditional, on sets.
Exactly, just that kind of journey. But then, most of the people that I knew were the same as me. They were ex-military people that like learned what an iris and shutter and camera and all these kind of things are in the army. through this sort of service, and there was like a kind of tight community, and they were like, yeah, you could come like second for me or whatever, trainee for me, and like carry cases around,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
from the stuff.
Israeli army has no idea. They're like creating all these filmmakers.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I don't think they care.
Don't care. Well, wait. So when you were doing it, when you were in the army doing it, did they give you any training, or is it really just like, here's a camera, just cover it? And like, how do you start to develop the, the more artistic eye?
You kind of do it on your own. There's kind of like AFI was. It has its own method of training that developed through the generations. So there is a sort of inaugural course, but it's funny because in the military, it's like military style. So I remember when I got in, they send me into this room with equipment, like a kind of storage room with all the grip equipment and lighting equipment, and whatever. And they said, like, okay, you got to take everything out, you got to clean all the shelves, dump everything, relabel everything, put it back in and store it. So it says like we should have 20 Big Bends and like 30 grip heads and like 10 butt plugs. And I'm like, what the fuck is a butt plug? You know what I mean? Like, you figure it out on your own. You know what I mean? They send you in there and they're just like, you do it. And so you're in there and you're like, I don't know what it is. And you just try to fumble through the things and figure it out on your own. And it's kind of this funny journey. And they say you can't come out of there until you finish. Because it's like these, I don't know, it's these 20-year-old kids that are telling the
It's like a
hazing
thing. It's like,
yeah.
No one told us, so we're not going to tell you.
Yeah, it's kind of like I guess like American college kind of thing. It's kind of like trial by fire sort of thing. But then you go out and you start kind of from the like, you start lugging equipment and stuff. And back at the time, I was AC, but on news, it's not like a focus puller. It's basically the guy that carries the equipment. And it was CRT monitors. So the monitors you had to carry around to the field were the big TVs, like old tube TVs. Yeah. And they were in this big case, you had to put on the shoulder, and you were carrying this big TV with a battery and a tripod and all this shit over you, and you're climbing up in the hills and stuff like that. So you start like that. And then it depends. You might go into sound, or you might go into video or stills or whatever. And then you get there, and they encouraged us very much in this unit to film at all times. Like, even if there isn't something like action, quote unquote, going on, even if it's like times of peace or whatever, where there isn't anything going on, they still want you to call up and figure out what's going on. Maybe there's an exercise going on over here or something like that, and just go do things. They were like, just do it. Don't think about if it's going to get released or there's going to be any press or whatever. Just shoot it first and then ask the questions later. So you just keep doing things, then you learn. And then some people just film it, and some people are like, oh, I could do a little bit more with this, I guess. And I also would like low-key sometimes steal the equipment on weekends and go to the beach or whatever and shoot art projects, or I don't know. I would use the opportunity because you have all this free equipment. Very similar. It's very similar to AFI. You know what I mean? You have all this equipment at your disposal. So it's like, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to use it, or are you going to just follow the numbers and you know what I mean? Do what you're told. It's like the people who something happens with them usually are the guys that kind of use the facilities that you have to make something out of it.
Right. They go above and beyond the.
Yeah, exactly. You just like, you have this great opportunity. You have 2-3 years to do it in.
Yeah. It's like, why are you here?
Grab it. Yeah, grab it.
Oh, do you remember? Did you ever get placed in any kind of very dangerous situations when you were covering in the army?
Yeah, multiple times. The kind of first one that jumps to mind, just because it's so like happening right now everywhere, was one of the first wars, or it was the first war in Gaza since the separation. It was in 2008, called Operation Cast Lead. I was the first person to go in the world, because they, like I said, they didn't let in news organizations or anything like that. So I got like a tip, like, hey, this operation is about to happen. Hit up this guy who's the general of the Givati brigade, and you could hit him up and you could get into his tank and they'll take you in. And that's how I got in, like very, very early on. And then I was in there for about 2 weeks, and I came out with the first footage, that was seen. And it was shown, this is the thing that I said, that was shown with Obama's inauguration. Because
But what were
Bibi
you were
somehow has this trick of always having wars in Gaza when there's a presidential election. And I don't think this is by coincidence, but this is another topic. We're going to talk about politics.
That is interesting.
When America is like, busy with something else, that's when these stupid things happen.
Oh wow.
But yeah, that was a very like kind of big time for me in terms of I didn't realize how much it would affect my film career because I was so focused on news, ENG, electronic news gathering. But there was this one time, I was sleeping in this ruined house over there, and there was a fire that was being shot on us, and it woke us up at like 4 a.m. or something. And they were like storming this other, Hamas thing that was like, coming at us, brigade, I don't know what it's called. And we were like, the troops that I was with were going after them, and they came down, and I followed them with a camera, and I was there with my one sound guy, Zamil, and they suddenly stormed, they were like, Lister, it's called in Hebrew, like storm, and they go with their guns, and they just walk down this field. This is a big empty field with no mountains or no shelter or anything. And they just walk. And I was with the camera behind the little trench, and I just started walking, with them, with the camera. And then Zamil, the sound guy, like pulled me, like, yes, we had guns with us, me and Zamil, but we weren't like, they weren't loaded, and we weren't ready to do anything. We were just holding the cameras, and he was holding the boom. And then he was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, get down here. Like, we're not, like, stop. And then I realized, oh, I got so sucked into the moment looking through the viewfinder that you forget. And you hear these stories of these military correspondents or these kind of people that they're, I heard recently this podcast in the New York Times, the guy that was filming the iconic shot now of Trump getting shot, the attempted assassination. And he was just looking through the lens, and he saw this moment, this iconic photograph, and he took it. And then only after the fact, he thought like, oh my God, I was only like 6 feet away from him. I was like in the line of fire, but like, I wasn't thinking of that at the time. I was just in this thing. And this is a very kind of news oriented mentality. But now I've taken
you're looking through a lens. It's like you're
looking through a lens. You're not even there. You're
right.
in the camera. You're thinking of all the, what's the good composition? Like, oh my God, this is amazing. I have to like represent it well. And you don't think about yourself at that moment. And in film, there is a little bit of this as well that happens, even though film is very premeditated and everything is planned, and then you're just executing the plan. It occurs in different ways. It occurs in ways of like, because filmmaking is really, really hard. And sometimes you're in situations where people aren't kind, and stress levels are high, and people aren't really saying what they mean and things like this. And then you just remember like, I've been in worse. Like, this is okay. We're just making a movie. You know what I mean? And you kind of take a step back, and you're like, it helps sometimes. So that was a big moment for me that in retrospect helped in the narrative filmmaking journey. But that was kind of the gist of it. It was a really interesting start. It was slightly different than the rest of like kind of my peers that came up a little bit more traditionally, but it had its advantages and delays in a certain way. But
yeah, it sounds like you made the most of it. Yeah. So it's funny though, because when you come to AFI, the first few weeks is called boot camp. You must have been like, oh, this is nothing. Like, real.
I love that. I love that term. Yeah.
So what made you want to take it to the next level and say, I want to go to graduate school. I want to study this and take it seriously?
I was
in cinematography specifically.
Well, I was working in cinematography before coming to AFI, like many of the cinematographers that go to AFI. And I was under the impression, sorry if you hear my kid crying, he's going to sleep in the background.
Barely.
I was under the impression, like I think lots of other people, where it's like film school is kind of like irrelevant. Film school is sort of like it's a thing that people that don't know what they're doing are going to go. It's like, you know what I mean? There's this kind of thing. And
Yeah.
then I was like, if I am going to go to film school, though, there's two film schools that I'm considering, or maybe three. There's like the NFTS in London, and then there's the Łódź Film School in Poland, and then there's AFI in LA. And then there was, while I was working on a certain film, there was this old kind of Russian camera guy that worked at one of the rental houses back in Israel. And it was this really wise guy. He was one of the last guys that knew how to like fix and calibrate film cameras. He was this really kind of cool, wise Yoda sort of character. And I remember once I was prepping a film with him, you know, in the camera bay for like a project that we're about to do. And he was like, where'd you go study? And I was like, I didn't go study. I don't need to study. I'm learning in the real world. You know what I mean? And he was like, you're not a man if you don't go to higher education. And I was like, whoa, really? Wow. And I felt really taken aback. And he's like, it doesn't have to be film. Like it could be anything, but you have to experience this, you know, in your life. And I was like, kind of took that with me a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking at the time, like, well, maybe it's not film. If like film schools, if I think film schools are like sort of a ripoff, then maybe I should learn something else. But like I said, there was these three film schools that I thought were kind of interesting. I applied to all of them. And I can't remember what the situation was with the other two, but I remember getting the acceptance to AFI, AFI being the top of the list, along with Łódź Film School. But Łódź, you have to go to Poland and learn Polish and study for 5 years for an undergrad, whereas AFI is a 2-year program in a language that I could speak. I kind of decided to go to AFI, and it was just a great choice. Do you know what I mean? But that was kind of the kernel of it. I remember this guy telling me the story. I wasn't planning on doing it. I was planning on doing, because a lot of people that start working and you start making money and you start paying for your apartment and stuff. You're like, why do I need to go to film school now? Like, what's there?
Right.
And I
It
was
feels like
so proven wrong. And I'm such an advocate on like going to film school because and I remember with Stephen Lighthill, when I was doing the interview with Stephen Lighthill and Bob Primes, and they were both saying like, oh yeah, okay, like yeah, we understand that you don't have like an undergrad in film, that's okay, but you probably have a lot of work experience, but like where's your theoretical knowledge? Like where's your knowledge in filmmaking? Where's your artistry? Do you know what I mean? Like where's your passion in film? Because that sometimes is lacking in the people that just like right away start working their way up. And like, wow, was I proven, you know, wrong, like right by them, you know, what they said. Because when I came to AFI, I realized how much of that part I was lacking and how much I learned from them and from other students about that part, but the passion for filmmaking and why you're making films and all these kind of things.
Yeah, that's the part that you know, when you're just thinking of the concept of film school that isn't being considered, because how could you know until you go through it? But like also what you're learning from the other students there, right? And
Major. I learned most of what you get from, at least from AFI, that's all I experience, is from the other students. AFI does a really good job at curating, at least in my time, and the generations above and below me, you know, a few years above and below me that I know about like who from where, what age group, what background. And it's just this great blend of like a little bit of everything. So it's got all the right spices. And then I think the teachers do a really good job at like kind of setting a path, and then they're just like, go on. You know what I mean? See what you discover. And all the good and bad and everything that evolves from that is just it's like alive. And there's a lot of great experiences and when I say experience, it's like it's a mix of like things you learn and like troubles you have with people that are acting a certain way, and how do you overcome that, and how do you collaborate, and how do you work with other people from different things. It's huge.
Part of it. Yeah,
it's a huge part of it.
How you learning how to collaborate is like probably the biggest thing, right? Like learning how to communicate and collaborate with
exactly
with people. Yeah, and AFI is like people from all over the world are here, right?
Exactly.
So,
I think my class was 60 or 70% international.
Wow, that's
it was big. Yeah, it was mostly very
Yeah.
few Americans in my class in my year in 2015 graduates.
That's a big move too, moving to Los Angeles from Israel.
Yeah, major move.
So big like culture shock, and then thrown into this, intense environment of a very, it can be competitive even if it's not built into the system. You could just feel competitive, but you can also feel imposter syndrome. What were your feelings when you first started AFI?
Yeah, I was too stupid to have imposter syndrome yet. That's a
Good.
disease I suffer from now. At the time, at the time, I was great. I was like the best. You know what I mean?
You saved it for when you're a professional. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was. My year in particular was very competitive in a healthy way, and it was hard. It was like it was probably the hardest. The first year was probably the hardest year of my life in terms of like putting in the work and putting in the hours and the effort. It was like they worked us like dogs. Do you know what I mean? In the best way
Yeah.
possible. You
Yeah.
really felt like at the time, and this is me speaking with the other students and just the word on the street. It was just like, wow, we're really getting our money's worth. You know what I mean? Because we were working 7 days a week, like till the wee hours of the night, just constantly doing
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
it
And that's
was,
like
it was great.
really specifically the cinematography program. Like there's
Mhm.
one class that you all would have that was like 9 hours long, a class. And then you got the
Yeah.
production days. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And every
Mm.
weekend, and doing all the different positions and the politics of that, you know what I mean? Because like I said, I came up from the camera background and I got a tip from my second, which I don't know if the listeners here like know how AFI works. It's like a prison system. It's like Oz, you know what I mean? You come in and you get someone that's similar to you from your clan that comes and takes you in. So I had this girl that was also from Israel, and she came in and she's like, "Hey, listen, this is how it works here. If you have a skill, they're gonna like leech on it." So she said, if you want to learn and grow, don't do what your skill is. So she says, for instance, if you're from a camera background, don't do camera work, do lighting work and suck at it. Do you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
took her advice, and then I was like, at first I was like, oh yeah, I came up being a focus puller. I'm a really good focus puller back from Israel, and I did like one job being a focus puller, and I'm like, oh, you're great. Wow, everything's sharp. It's so easy. And then I got a bunch of other offers doing the same thing. And then I realized, oh, wait, no. I came to film school. Like, I'm not trying to be good at the job. I'm trying to learn and make mistakes. So then I started doing lighting, which I knew nothing about. And I just bombed. I was so bad at it at first. And then I stopped getting like, the cool films or whatever. People wanted the more skilled people. But that's part of the politics of it. Do you know what I mean? You have to
Yeah.
kind of guide your own path, and you have to allow yourself to make the mistakes.
Now, first of all,
Um,
you're not going to work for admissions by comparing AFI to a prison. Uh, but you're also not wrong. Also not wrong. But that advice is actually so great, and it applies to all the disciplines. It's like, don't do the thing that you're already good at and comfortable with. You're here to experiment. You're here to take big swings. Otherwise, you're never gonna grow as an artist, right?
yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm glad that person said that. Do you remember Real Day, where everyone looked at their work that they did before
Oh,
AFI?
of course I do. Of course I do. The
Yeah,
legendary day
that's
that you
sometimes a very
emceed that day. I remember it very well.
it's a great way, like, everybody gets to know each other really, rapidly in a very long day, but through their
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
Um, do you remember anyone in particular who's like you saw their work and you sought them out?
Yes, I do. I remember a lot from that day. That was a big day because you're waiting and waiting and waiting to like for this day. It's like grown up show and tell.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember the work. I remember 100% the work of people that what they showed. The work that impacted me at the time. I remember, do you remember Shelley Lawman from Australia?
Yeah. Yeah, I
And I
do.
can't remember, the project that she showed at the moment, but I remember seeking her out really quickly afterwards. I remember a DP that I was working with, Sean Bagley, who had this reel that I was like, oh God, because it was so good. And I was like, what am I doing here? That was like maybe a taste of imposter syndrome at the time. I was like, wow. But I also felt very proud because
Yeah.
I felt like, wow, this kind of quality is here, that means something that I'm here as well, because the
Yeah.
level is very, very high on some of these things.
Yeah.
And I also remember work that maybe at the time didn't speak so much to the curriculum, but I still remember to this day, which means it was impactful. There was some students that were like documentary based, and they had some really beautiful documentaries. Did they
Mhm.
show a lot of like glossy, expensive equipment techniques and stuff? No, they seemed very like basic, in a way. But this is now I'm what, like 10 years later? Jesus, like 9 years later, I still remember.
Yeah.
Or more. Gosh, yeah, like
It's
11
9,
years? Jesus,
9 years.
11, 20, when was this,
Oh, yeah, because
2013?
when you
It's like
started was
11
yeah,
years later, I still remember there was
yeah.
this one beautiful documentary of these paint signers in New York, the people that go and paint, hand paint signs, like big billboards in New York.
I think I
And I
remember that.
remember, yeah,
Yeah.
and I remember it to this day because it was really interesting and beautiful, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like that's a huge day. I mean, the show and tell day. Plus, you're waiting for it since admissions because they tell you you have to have something ready for this. I'm
So yeah,
embarrassed of
some
what I
people are
showed.
waiting because they're like, "Please do not call on me." And some people like yourself, you're like, "Come on, let's go, let's go. I want to show my
Yeah,
stuff."
yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
So in that first year, there's a lot thrown at you, like you said. It's tiring, exhausting, but you're also cramming a lot into your brain. Do you remember like any kind of light bulb moments, something that you learned that kind of cracked it open for you?
There's too much.
There's too
Like,
much?
there's
Yeah.
literally too much. There's so many of
Yeah.
those things that happened.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll tell you the biggest one, and I'm not going to name names, but there was, I'll name the teacher. There was a teacher, Bill Dill, famous, right? So
Yes.
Bill Dill, in one of Bill Dill's classes, there was a movie that was shown, and it was a very popular film um, in the full curriculum. It was shown in I forgot what the name of the class is when you show it for everyone. The
Oh, like the seminar classes, like the
MSGRs. Yeah, the
yeah,
MSGR, like the
yeah,
big
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And it was very favored, and it was a really beautiful, well-made film, and very emotional and very real and well acted and well shot and well everything. Do you know what I mean? And then uh, it was shown in Builder's class, and he paused on the first frame, and he was like, he like looked at his watch. He's like, nah. And he kept watching it, and he's like, okay, good. And we watched it, and it was just praising it, and like, oh wow, this is so good. This is amazing. Wow, how well thought this film is. How the production design works with the cinematography, that works with the direction, works with the acting, and it's all like one. How well made this is. And if this would go to, I remember him saying something. This would go to film festivals, like this would win in Cannes, and well done, you guys. And then he finished reviewing the film as he does, shot by shot for those people that know how Bill like runs his classes, viewing these films. And then he like at the end of it, he's looked at his watch. Okay. And he went back to the beginning of the film and was like, okay, we have a moment. And then he paused on the first frame, which is the first one that he kind of cautioned at. And he was like, so what is it that you see, here? Like, what is it that you're feeling right now? And I don't want to get into too many details of this film, right? But it was dark and it was grungy, and it was really beautiful, but it was like emotionally it was very like stark. And he was like, is this how the characters in the film feel right now, or is this you as the filmmaker, how you feel about the characters right now? And this started this whole subject matter of how you represent a certain type of people in films, no matter what it is. If it's Black people, or if it's Latino people, or if it's religious people, or if it's like whatever it is. How are you as a filmmaker bringing in your own impressions of this into this? And this was like a moment that was like, for all of us that at the time we were all caught up of like lenses and cameras and
Mm.
lighting and technique and all these kind of things, and maybe like narrative structure, maybe, and these kind of, we never thought of like the bigger picture, And he reiterated, he was like, you know, yeah, this film is going to, you know, win a lot of festivals and people are going to like it a lot. But like, is this what you're trying to do? Because this film is trying to fix a problem, but at the same time, is it? Or is it reinforcing sort of a stereotype? Is it trying to fix a problem by showcasing the problem? Or is it by showcasing the problem just adding more to the umbrella of films that show this group of people in this manner? And this was like a very kind of art school, like very basic thing that you would learn at like an art school on representation and these kind of things. And this is also like, this is 2013 when we did this. And it was kind of like, it was very interesting to have a teacher at AFI talk about things in this way. And that was like a huge moment for me and for the whole classroom. It was a big topic that nobody really talked about at AFI. And I'm really happy that that came up at the time.
So it was going beyond film. It was kind of like, because most of your
It
classes
was,
are about the craft,
yeah,
right? And this
yeah.
was
It
more
was
about
just
like,
about art, and it was about culture, and it was
right.
about
Like, what's your responsibility?
America, and yeah, and like, why are you making films? You know, and the responsibility of making films, because film is a medium that is seen by so many people, more than any other medium almost. Like it's mass shown to like millions of people, an audience. So it's like, and you're not there to take back the, you know, like you're not there while you're presenting it. Do you know what I mean? You're kind of anonymous in a way. So it's
Yeah.
very different than other kind of forms of art. So
Right. And it's like not yours anymore after you make it.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So it kind of bears sort of a thought process to it, because sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't happen. You don't really ever know, but it's just thinking like what it is that you're doing and why are you doing it, and like taking sort of authorship of it. And that wasn't at that point in AFI. We haven't really talked about that. So that was like that was a big moment for me.
Has it ever come up in your professional career where you've challenged
Always,
a
all
director?
the
Like,
time.
really? I
I
shouldn't say challenge, but had the
no,
conversation.
I definitely had the conversation. It definitely like helped me a lot. And I have a film coming out.
Remember, before we get started, whatever it says to you, do not listen to it. It will play on your heart, it will play on your mind. My name is Apostle Bernice James. The other person present is Ebony Jackson, the mother. Father, we ask that you cleanse and sanctify us for this deliverance. Ebony, get back.
If you believe, you shall be saved. You shall be saved. You shall be saved. You shall be saved.
This is the one that I might be coming to LA for in late August. It's premiering August 30th on Netflix.
The
Called
Deliverance?
The Deliverance, which is Lee Daniels' film. And that had a lot of it's about like a true story of a possession of a single Black mother with 3 children in Indianapolis. And our film, it happens in Pittsburgh, but it's based on this true story that happened in Indianapolis. And Lee had this very strong opinion, which I 100% agree to, where he's like, I don't want to make poverty porn. Like, I don't want to make another poor Black family, struggling single mom, like Oscar winning, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what I mean? I'm so tired of anytime there's a movie that is helmed by like a Black woman, that's her struggle. Do you know what I mean? I actually want to make her a little bit more affluent, and not necessarily affluent, but like I want to give her style. Like I want to be cool. And even though she doesn't have a lot of means, I want to show that she knows how to use her means. and like it was a very conscious thing that was constantly going on, because the true story, when you look at the photos of the real story, you know, the house she lived in and these kind of things are very run down, and we looked at those kind of locations to begin with, and Lee was just very much like, I just, even though this lines up with the true story, it's like, I don't want to do this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want the poverty porn. So that, and then that immediately I was thinking of this story, and you know, that I started from AFI and happened many times after. It's a common thing that you see in filmmaking. And yeah, and I was like, I totally get it, 100% get it.
I love
so,
that.
yeah.
I love that you brought that up. It's a great, that's just a great thing for people to consider. Yeah. I've heard you also read in an interview, you quoted Bill Dill, you know, something that you still talk about today, or that you still use, which one of his, I love practical advice, by the way, and that's what this is. And it was just like, Bill said, you'll probably say it better, but if every shot's a close-up, then nothing's a close-up, right? It's all about contrast in visual storytelling.
Yes, that's like, that's another one of Bill Dill's favorites of mine. Yeah, because it's so true, and it's true in the example of the close-up, which I still use to this day, when directors say like, okay, so it's the opening scene and then cut to close-up, and I'm like, wait, we don't even know who this person is yet. Like, are you sure you want to go to a close-up? And not saying that you're not allowed to go to a close-up in the first scene. It's totally fine. You could start the movie in a close-up, for all I care. But it just that you're aware of the fact that once you see the character this personally up close, you're going to have to work really hard now to gain it again. When you get to that really important emotional scene where they're breaking down, you have to work extra hard, because if you hold back, I use this piece of advice in a different way on a film called Lamb, that was a small independent film that was eventually distributed by A24. And it was a completely, for the first like 45 minutes, there's almost zero dialogue for, I think, 40 minutes. And also the camera is completely locked. And the director and I had this agreement that even if the characters like step out of the frame or anything like that, just keep it locked, like resist the urge. I remember I had an urge to like pan sometimes or tilt or something with them. And he's like, he's at the monitor, like, stop. Do you know what I mean? He was so disciplined about it. But then at a certain moment that means something in the story, it's like their child goes missing at a certain point, about the 45-50 minute mark. Then for the first time, the camera just dollies to the right. It doesn't break even 3 dimensions. It doesn't like dolly in or do anything like that. It literally just tracks to the side, which is still a very 2D movement. But the motion of it just moving all of a sudden, you're like, whoa. It has such a huge impact, because
there's so much power there. Because,
so much power because you got used to not having that.
Yeah.
And this is the same idea with the close-up kind of concept with Bill Dill. Is like, you don't have to like go on a robotic camera arm and make some crazy camera move that like no one has ever seen before. If you just hold back like basic tools, you can use them really effectively in the story when you need them. So if you hold back on a close-up of your lead actor or actress until the moment where it really counts, that close-up will be so effective when you cut to it. If you place that close-up at the time that you really got to get in there. And of course, rules are meant for breaking, and Bill's all about this. And all of the rules, you know, these kind of things that Bill Dill says is all about just like know what you're doing when you do it. Like you don't have to follow it, but you know, this is a good tip to sit on your shoulder all the time when you're shot planning or, you know, advising directors on shot lists that they have or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
I've always heard that, like in the professional world, when you know you're working with an AFI DP, because they ask you why. Like, why are we putting the camera there? Why are we using this lens?
Oh my God, it's a blessing and a curse.
Cool. You can't say because it's cool.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, exactly.
I always say like, why are you doing that? And they're like, because it's cool. And I'm like, okay, cool, so fine.
Yeah, you're like, that's not enough.
What am I gonna do? I'll say everything twice. This is my rule. I'll mention things twice, and if the director still wants to do it, I'll be like, okay, you got it. As long as you're thinking about it. That's,
Yeah, you did your job. You did your job. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not gonna be a pain in the ass.
I
I'm
love
like,
it.
sorry, I mentioned this once before, but just gonna mention it a second. Are you sure? And they're like, yep. I'm like, okay.
Okay, everyone, I got a witness. Okay, we're on record.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I want to hear about it when you're editing. Yeah,
Yeah. And and sometimes I'm proven wrong. Very, very often I'm proven wrong. So
yeah,
so sometimes I have this idea because whatever. And then I see the end film and I'm like, I see what they were thinking. Okay,
yeah,
cool. Yeah, I gotcha. I gotcha
yeah.
now. Yeah. It's
So when
very important to be.
you're at AFI, you're going in that second year. Like AFI happens really fast, right? Especially with cinematographers because you have so much to do. Second year comes fast, and soon it's over. But in that second year, were you thinking about, oh, what is next? Like, how do I get that career going? Or are you just like hustle, hustle, work, work, make contacts?
Yeah, pretty much the second and the first combined, because I
Mm,
didn't have like my base in LA except for the AFI family. So I was just trying to do everything I could. Like every Craigslist ad at the time, there was like this Mandy.com, which
yeah.
was like Craigslist, and shooting films for other film schools, their graduate projects, and just anything, just to get my foot in the door and just to practice
Yeah.
and make mistakes and do cool things and use new equipment and music videos and all these kind of things. I literally whatever I could do, I could do.
Which is smart, which I always think is great advice. And there are some I've talked to alum before that are like, and I was consciously, I'm not going to take any job that's not the director of photography. Even if I have to do it for free, because you could get, like you said, in Israel, you get caught up in a career, as an AC or whatever. But you have to present yourself as a cinematographer
Right.
and get those
Yeah.
credit, right?
I agreed with that while I was coming out of AFI. I ended up having to do some AC projects for the money.
Hmm.
And actually they weren't always just stagnant jobs, or they didn't lead down the wrong path. They actually sometimes led to a good path. Because one of the films that I AC'd for was a feature film that actually led me to a really great relationship with Panavision, because this film was being supplied to by Panavision. So I was there prepping the film for like a week, and I got to know the people there really, really closely. And then when it came to my like free Craigslist jobs afterwards, I could hit up the people that I met there and be like, hey, I got this really small, no money job. I'm not getting paid. No one's getting paid. It's all a favor thing. Can you help us out? And then they would help us out sometimes with like equipment. And then, when the jobs kept going, I was like, oh, now I could pay you a little bit. Now I could pay you full price. And, so it did, it isn't, it's different for everybody's journey, but I do agree that you don't want to get stuck. It is a thing, and it's a thing that you deal with in different levels. Like I'm dealing with it now in my career, which is like it's trouble of the rich. But right now I'm dealing with mid-budget horror studio films. Right? It sounds like a good place to be stuck,
Yeah.
but it's something that I'm trying to like break out of now, because I did this film called Lamb, which was intended to be an art house film. It was sold by A24 as a horror film. I started getting hit up by studios that are trying to make like folk horror or like auteur horror or like highbrow horror kind of films.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's gotten to a place where I I get hit up for like remakes of old horror films from like the 90s and stuff like that, and I'm saying no to it, and I feel very kind of like I don't have another job lined up, but I just don't want to go down
Yeah.
a route where this is what I'm doing. And it's the same thing when you get out, it's the same thing at different levels. Like when you get out of AFI, it's like you don't want to get stuck. You have an idea of what it is that you want to do. You have to stick to that, but it's a balance. Everything in life is a balance. You also can't just do nothing, because if you do nothing, you're just forgotten.
Right.
So you just got
Right.
to choose wisely and just not like saturate yourself with a certain thing that is not. It's more about saturation, I think. Just don't
Yeah.
completely lose yourself in this thing. It's okay to like, if it feels right, go down that path because you feel like it's going to help towards your end goal. But
Mhm.
that's always the case. You have to feel like, okay, if I'm a gaffer or whatever, an electrician, and I come to AFI and I want to be a DP, we graduate from AFI and I get an offer to come on as best boy on some film. Is the director a first-time director that's like a really interesting person that I want to impress? That, you know, is this DP someone who's like, you know, might help me get into these other things? Is there a producer here involved? It's like worth knowing. Like, think about the end goal. Yes, you want to be a DP, but maybe this is a good in-between thing to make some money and gain some contacts and kind of work, you know, worm your way into the right direction. I would say definitely go for it. Don't just be like this, but also don't, you know, completely lose yourself. That everybody's like, oh, because this happened to me, like you say, in Israel, where I would try to DP some projects like he's a focus puller. He's not a DP. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
actually, I started DPing things a few months ago. And they're like, no. Everybody knows you as the focus puller. So yeah, it's
It's hard to change. Yeah, it is hard to shift people's version of what your identity is, right?
yeah,
Like their
yeah,
perception of you, and you have to just kind of sometimes stand firm and force it on them. Yeah, it's
exactly.
interesting
It's
to hear
always,
though.
you always have to take it. Yeah, you got to take a step forward to take
Yeah,
one step back, two steps forward.
yeah,
But you have to be willing to take that one step back, and you have
yeah,
to be ready to take that one step back. Don't take that one step back if you're not ready to take the one step back.
right.
Sometimes it's okay to stay on the path, get to the point where you're willing to start saying no to work, be bored, be broke, you know,
Hmm.
don't live the lifestyle that you had up until this point for a short while, and then see what happens. You know, some people get lucky, some people don't.
Yeah,
So it's risk taking. So
it's
it's
interesting to
different
hear
for
though
everybody.
that
Yeah.
even DPs get typecast. You hear about actors
Oh
and
my
things like
God.
that, but like
Yeah.
that you could be the horror DP.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's so easy, I think, to fall into the, because nobody wants someone who's never done something before.
Hmm.
Like
Right.
everybody just wants, can you give me the same thing that I saw last time? And you know, nobody really wants to do that. Everyone wants to grow.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
And when you were making Lamb, it was not a horror film, like you said. It wasn't a horror film in your mind. Did
No, it
you
was never a horror film. Yeah, no.
did you know that it was something special though? Because that really is
I
the
did.
film that broke you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. Lamb was a big step back for me because I was doing quite well in music videos and fashion photography in LA at the
Hmm.
time. And I was working with well-known like kind of celebrities and making good money and, you know, living in a nice place in LA and everything was fine. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to do films because I did a couple of films in LA and I didn't like the scripts and I didn't like the work and I was just like I was at a point where I was like, I don't know, do I really want to make films? Like maybe it's fine making, you know, music videos like Michelle Gondry and Spike Jonze and these people that I
Where it
always
all
wanted
started,
to do
right?
their thing, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I was
Yeah.
like, maybe these feature things. And I got the opportunity to look at the script of Lamb through some contacts from AFI. And then I read the script and I was like, oh, I knew it was something special. It was so different, but it had no backing and it was just like this cool project that no one's heard of. And I was like, I gotta do this. And I said, I'm willing to leave everything and do this for, you know, as long as the prep takes and shoot it. I just knew it was a good thing. And then luckily it was bigger actually than I even thought. You know what happened with it. I would never expect it to do what it did.
Hmm.
But you know when you get the script, like you read it in the script. It's really like you get a script. It's a really good script, and your job as a DP, I think, is like not to fuck it up. Because if it's a good script, it's going to be a good movie. You could
Yeah.
only keep it the same or elevate it. You can't take like a bad script and make it look amazing. Like
Yeah.
that's futile as a DP at least.
So you mentioned really quick though. You said it was through an AFI connection that script came
It
to you.
was. Yeah, it was.
There you go. There's film school paying off, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So you went after it. What did you do to get that job?
Lamb.
Yeah.
I so I knew one of the producers of the film, and I got the script, and the director wasn't considering me as a DP. He was considering very fancy DPs, like Hoyt van Hoytema and Łukasz Zal, and like these very fancy DPs.
Wow.
And I was just, it was way early before they were shooting it, and I was living in LA, and I was like, oh, you know, I could test these lenses for you in Panavision or whatever. And I would do some things and put it on Vimeo and send it to him and be like, oh, this is a cool lens. You could try this or do this. And we started just a conversation. And then I think it was just the luck of the draw that I think he was aiming a little bit too high or something, or the timetables didn't work out. And these DPs that he was talking to, he struck out on them. And then he was like, oh, what about this, you know, this guy Eli that I know through one of my producers that's like, you know, he's around, he's available, but he doesn't really have any feature work that's notable. He's a music video fashion guy. And then I remember all the people kind of involved in the film were like, no, this will never work. He's never done it before. How could he do it?
Yeah, how could you? How would you know how to do it?
Someone who's done the same thing before. But then he was determined. He was like, no, I think this is the right guy. And thanks to him, you know, and then I came on and did it. So
yeah,
I was just lucky, basically.
Yeah, that first opportunity, like you know, the director has to go to bat for you, really.
Oh, and, for sure. I think on every opportunity, even the Lee Daniels film that's about to come out, that was the film that I did after Lamb. I think it was the first film I did after Lamb. It's been the longest to be released. It's been a long time.
Oh, okay.
But I've done a few films since then that have come out. But this one's about to come out. But even for that, I remember Lee had to go to bat for me because it was the same thing. Like, he's never done a studio film. Why would he do a studio film? Like, we need someone who's done this before. And I lost a few studio.
It was even after Lamb came out and was winning cinematography awards?
It did, yeah. But Lamb was a $3 million film, and Lee's film was like a $70 million film. So they were like, how are you going to be able to do this? You know what I mean? Manage the size of crew. Like, Lamb was at our biggest, I think the crew was like 30 people. And then you move to a film that's like 400 people or something like this. Like, how do you manage this? Where and they, you know, that was the biggest case of imposter syndrome I had, because I came and I was surrounded by these people that were so much more knowledgeable and experienced than me, and I was just this like little pipsqueak that I had no idea what I was talking about. And that's a whole other politics of how you navigate that and admit to the fact that, like, you don't know everything, but you want to surround yourself by people who know better than you, and you're just there to be the whatever, the brain with all the tentacles, and the tentacles need to know better than the brain, sort of thing.
Right.
So yeah, that's a whole other.
I feel like that's a whole that's a
whole other conversation of dealing with these kind of studio films and stuff. But it's always, and I kind of feel that when you're in that zone where you feel uncomfortable, that's like the best zone to be in. I know it's like a little cliche to say that, but like, it's true. Like, if you feel terrified for your life, and the feeling of imposter syndrome is like, that's a positive place to be. It means that you're growing. It means that you're stepping maybe one rung too high on the ladder.
Right.
So,
right. Even if it's like, I never need to do this kind of movie again, at least you did it, right? And you learned from it, and you know going forward, right? You have that experience in you.
Oh, yeah. It's so important. It's so important to just try it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What your favorite? What's your? I mean, now that there's been some separation with Lamb, you know, and I'm sure like you're critical of your own work as an artist, but now that you can step back, what is your favorite scene or shot from Lamb, and why? Or is it hard to remove the personal connection of knowing like the elements that were involved of getting the shot and hiking?
The elements are everything. The elements are everything.
Can you watch your own movies, or is it always like it just brings back the memories of making it?
I haven't seen Lamb for a few years, but I have a shot that I'm very happy with, and I think I'm happy with it because I was wrong. Or I thought it would never work, and then it worked. So the director had this shot, which I think it's in the trailer, where it's a very simple shot, and it was storyboarded very simply. It's just the mother with her lamb child and the father, and then in the middle is the biological mother of the lamb
Oh, that is in the trailer.
running behind. Yeah,
Yeah.
but running behind in the middle, and she
Yeah.
emerges from the mist. So the storyboard where it was like these two people walking, perfectly symmetric, her over here, him over here, and the lamb child asleep in her arms, and there's mist behind, and then the mother sheep comes running out. So great. It's not like crazy complicated, you know, it's just a pull back sort of shot. It's a two shot pulling back. But I was like, Jesus, there's a sleeping lamb and there's mist outside in a valley. And then we need a sheep, not a dog, you know, not a horse, a sheep. I don't know if you how many time you spent with a sheep doing something on cue, you know what I mean, and doing this thing. So me and the VFX supervisor and the first assistant director, we were like, are we going to build a fence and like make sure that the sheep runs this way and doesn't go that way or run the opposite way, which is most likely. And it's like, how much time do we do this? And we're with also with Star, you know, that only has a limited amount of time on set, and a sleeping lamb, and how are we going to do that, you know, and put it to sleep with warm milk and all this kind of shit. And I told the director the day before, because we're having a powwow the day before that shot, and I was like, it's just, guys, we have to have a plan B and C, because plan A, I'm just going to say, and I got really cocky, I was like, I'm just going to say, it ain't going to work. You know, it's never ever going to work. And then, of course, on the second take, it worked perfectly. It just worked. And the director was so happy. And
So just
I was
like that's
what?
the shot, like that's in camera.
It's just the shot worked, and like the plan and the director's plan worked perfectly. And and it's in shot. And if you look really closely in the background, what you'll see is how we did it was the farmer that owned the mother sheep was holding her in the background, and he just let her loose, and he had like a camo, sort of like the pants I'm wearing, like a camo thing on him, and then he just let the sheep go, and then he just ducked, you know, and he just hid in the background, and you could see this little mound in the background, which is the farmer, you know, right where he was. Like that's when they cut into the shot. That's the minute he let go. He just pretended to be like a patch of moss, and then the sheep just ran, and it ran just right enough in the direction that we needed, and then boom. And there was no VFX needed at all. It was all in camera. And we had all these complicated ideas of shoot one pass with the sheep with a fence and clean out the fence and shoot an element of a sleeping lamb and then shoot the actors separately so we don't have to waste their time, and combine these 3-4 elements together into this one marriage. And it just worked. And it's great. You know, that was a moment where like, eureka, you know, everything is coming together. Thanks,
Is that one of
God.
those like everyone's like hugging after, like, you know?
Oh my God, such a crazy. I was literally jumping up and down after it, because I just couldn't believe what I was seeing.
That's so cool. I love
Yeah, and it's such a simple thing, you know. It's a simple, in theory, request. The shot. It isn't anything crazy complicated. It's not like a long oneer, you know, like a James Bond oneer with like it's a 3-minute long thing. It's just a
It's always the simple ones, right? Like,
shot.
and as a viewer, when you watch it, you're like, oh, I mean, it's beautiful, but you don't think of like, oh, that must have been really hard to pull off.
Yeah,
until you break it down, like you just did. Yeah,
exactly.
So okay, we'll bring this to an end because you've been generous with your time. And wait, are you ahead or behind? I don't even know what time it is.
It's 9:30 p.m. here.
Oh, p.m.
As you can see outside. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Iceland
why
in the summer. Yeah.
That's why your child was going to bed. Oh, wait, how old is your kid now?
He's 3.5.
He's 3. What's his name?
His name's Rakvi. It's R-O with like an umlaut, K-K-V-I. It's an Icelandic name. It means twilight.
Wow. Beautiful. Wait, so tell us what it was about Iceland that you fell in love with. You live there now. You're from Israel. You went to LA, spent a lot of time here, and then now just that triangle is crazy.
Oh, why Iceland? It's you know, a classic story. It's a woman, Icelandic woman.
Sure.
The mother of my child. Yeah, she's Icelandic. I met her in LA.
Yeah.
And yeah, now I'm here.
What is that?
Lamb was a big initiative, you know, to the whole thing.
But is there something nice about it, like removing yourself from Hollywood and from the industry, day-to-day talk of the industry?
You know, I miss LA. I think LA, I do miss LA, and I'm excited to maybe come in a month from now. I haven't been in a couple of years. Am I going to move back? I don't know, but I really like LA and I appreciate it. I like the film vibe of it. You know, you could have a full kind of fat, juicy life within the film industry in LA because it's so
Yeah.
vivid and alive, and I miss that a little bit. Um, but yeah, it's great here. It's a whole different. It's just a different animal. You know,
Yeah.
there's a film community here, but it's more akin to like there's a great film community here in Iceland, but it's everybody knows everybody and everyone's really cool and everyone's doing their thing. But it's not like LA where it's just like massive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you never know what's going to happen next. And, yeah.
Well, cool. I mean, selfishly, yeah, I hope you come back.
Yeah, maybe.
So,
But maybe I'll see you in a month from now.
oh, you better come. I mean, what would be cool is if we showed, like, you know, you bring Lee Daniels over and we do a little seminar and a screening and a
Oh.
talk.
Let me send, when I buy the plane tickets, let me send you an email. We'll see.
Yeah, do it. And when I was looking it up, the editor is also
Stan Salfas.
Dan Salfas, who is not an alum, but he is a longtime teacher here. Yeah.
He was, yeah, I know. That's what was my connect with him. I had coffee with him one day in Pittsburgh when he came, like 2-3 years ago when we shot the film.
Oh, cool.
Oh, I taught, you know, did you study with whatever, this guy? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I was his teacher. I was like, what? Because the DPs and the editor teachers, we never really collided. I was like, what? Yeah, but he was a sweetheart. Yeah.
But so as you've moved up, I mean, and this kind of applies to when you were doing fashion stuff. But you worked with Night Shyamalan and his daughter, and that had movie stars in it. But you've worked with stars for a long time. But you're normally the operator, right? When you shoot.
Yeah.
What have you learned about, like, you're usually the closest person to those actors, to these movie stars. What have you learned about, like, how to, kind of compose yourself and conduct yourself around them as the cinematographer?
It's tricky because it's very easy to become their best friend, which is important because you want to have this trust. It's dangerous because sometimes it could outgrow the relationship with the director, because there's certain directors that sit right next to the camera, and there's most of the times, at least in my experience, directors that sit with the script supervisor and the producers or whatever in the big fancy monitor, which I don't blame them. It makes sense. When I have operators, I'm also over there. I'm not next to the camera. I want to see what everything is going on in the best screen possible. But there was a film that I did called The Damned that premiered in Tribeca this year. It's coming out at some point later this year, I think. That the lead actress on this film, there was a scene that I named too many names. Whatever, I'll tell the story anyways. We wrapped a shot, we finished a take, and she said, that was so shit. Like, can we go again? And then we hear from far away the director saying, cut, excellent, we got it, moving on. And then I looked at her and she was like, fuck it. You know what I mean? Whatever. And then I was like, no, fuck it. And it was clear that when she said that, it was kind of like, I see you, you see me kind of thing of like I don't want to fight this battle sort of thing. And then I went to the director and I was like, hey, she said that I think you should really go again. And then we did another take, and then we finished the take, and then I looked at her and she looked at me, and I was like, with my eyes, I was like, is that better? And she was like, kind of rolled her eyes. She was like, whatever, sort of thing, but like kind of said like, whatever, you did your thing, let's move on, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But this was like a moment where I was like, okay, this is kind of very interesting because it is, you get this, and this is actually more advice for directors, I think, than DPs or operators or whatever. Operators all know this, but it's like when you finish a take, actors are going to look at the first kind of eye line, kind of line of sight of reality that they can find, and they're going to look for a sort of approval or an opinion or something. And if the director is there, the director will be the first person they look at. If the director isn't there, they're going to first look at the DP, and if the DP isn't there, they're first going to look at their camera operator. And it's going to build that sort of relationship. And in between takes, you're going to be chatting, so is it the right place to be? I don't know. Like, do you want to spend your time on set chit-chatting and like shooting the shit with the actors, or do you want to be focusing on making the film? I don't know. It's like there isn't a right or wrong here, but it definitely is a factor. So I don't know. I think where you started, like my advice is, if you're a DP and you are in this situation, it's a very good situation to be, but make sure that you don't overstep the director and you become sort of the director, because you have to make sure that their relationship is intact. It can't become the two of you, like the lead actor and the DP, against the director. Like, we know better than this guy that's over there. Like, you have to, like, the director and the DP, like the director is your person. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Don't get sucked into that. The director has to get sucked into that. It's not your job to get sucked into that thing. So make sure that the director gets there. So if the director isn't there and he isn't aware of what's going on, make sure that the director gets into that mess.
Help your director.
That emotional actor thing, place that they are. Don't you get sucked in there, because it's very tempting to get sucked.
Well, their actors are inherently seductive, right?
Yeah, and it's like, you know, and it's a beautiful place to be. Like, that's what the you know, as a DP, you know, we're DPs from AFI. It's like, we know that it's all about the story. It's all about helping the actors emote, and you know, an actor is like there doing their thing, and then they ask for your feedback. Like, that's what you're going to care about. You're not going to care about the lights of the composition or these kind of things. You're going to try to help them, but it's at the end of the day, that's the director's job. Do you know what I mean? It's your job to advise the director how to light it and compose it and blah, 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 to make their performance better. But it's not your job to tell them how their performance was, or, you know, things like that.
But like you said, great advice for directors. If you want to bond with your actors, be there when it's
try it. Try to trust your DPs and know that it's going to look great. You know, there's a lot of really, really talented, amazing DPs out there that everything's going to look fabulous. But there's the only person who could direct your actors is you. Nobody else can direct your actors. So, and I think you do that the most effectively when you're next to them. And
well said. Well said. Good advice. Okay, too quick. This is rapid fire. 2 pieces. One piece of equipment that is really impactful in what you do, and 1 piece of advice.
Equipment. I guess a director's viewfinder. I really liked the director's viewfinder apps. I think they're super, super helpful. And I think better than that are the physical director viewfinders. And really quickly, I'll say why. Because when you give someone Artemis or like RE viewfinder or something like this, you could change the lenses really easily. Directors don't understand lenses, so they often want to go wider, and then they're like, I want this shot, and then they give you like a 12 millimeter lens, like over here, and they don't understand what that's going to do to people's faces and stuff. When you have a physical director's viewfinder that, like, I mean the ones that you attach the lenses to, which apparently are a waste of time because you have to ask your AC to swap lenses and da-da. But then you as a DP say, I want a 35 millimeter or a 50 millimeter. Give me that on the viewfinder. And then you give it to the director, and then the director inherently can't zoom out or in like on the phone. They have to take some steps back to find the frame. Right. So that gives you as a DP the ability to choose the lens, and then you give the director the ability to choose the position of the camera. So I think that's a really useful piece of equipment.
Wait, have you heard that? Have people said it's a waste of time?
No, this is just something that I've experienced.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure on a lower.
Because I really like the iPad, you know, with the thing, because it's a big screen and you could share it together, you know, unlike a director's viewfinder where one person's looking at a time. So for many years, I was like, use the iPad with the Artemis is what I use. And you have all the lenses, all the cameras in the world, and it's super easy, right? And you just choose this and that. But then I learned that it's much more useful to have the old school thing. Not only does it look kick-ass and like behind the scenes photos.
The best. But, you right.
Yeah, you know, not just that. That's a nice added bonus, but it allows you as a DP, because directors usually don't. They think in terms of, this is a nerdy DP term, but they think in terms of field of view, not in terms of depth of view, of like lens choice. So they're just thinking of what you see within the frame rather than type of lens that you choose. So choosing the lens for them and then letting them choose what you see within the frame is, I think, a little bit more effective.
Great. And then the last is like piece of advice, but like, I guess in terms of, since this is like focused on film school, what is your advice to young filmmakers when they say, I'm thinking of going to film school? I'm sure you get it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was in the same boat. I was like, I felt like I didn't need it, you know? Like I said, I was already working and I was making money and I could see my career trajectory. Like I could see how I'm gonna start, you know, I was, at the time that I got into AFI, I was starting to shoot commercials. I was a focus puller on many films and commercials, and I proved my parents wrong at that point. I was making enough money to sustain an apartment and da 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 da. But it was a point where like I wanted to see how far I could push my career further. It was kind of this sort of break the glass ceiling sort of thing. Like I had a path, but let's see what we could do. Do you know what I mean? Let's see how far we could push this. And like anything that you learn properly, you don't know what you don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like you feel like, oh, I just have to learn this and that, and then I'll be great. But what I at least learned from going to AFI is like, it suddenly, everything zoomed out, and I was like, whoa, there's so much that I have no idea about. Do you know what I mean? It opened up this whole new thing. So I think film school gives you that perspective on things. Is it going to teach you everything that you want to know? No. Is it going to humble you? Yes. So I think it's really important to go and like be humbled that way. And that could come from the teachers or the curriculum. And it, like we said before, it comes also from the other students that are so great. And AFI specifically, that has such a high bar to begin with. The curriculum level starts so high. Where you're like, whoa, this is like our first or second class is already at this level. And you're like, damn, you know, and where is this gonna go?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Top Gun Academy, right?
Yeah.
The best of the best.
Yeah. It was. No, it really was. And it had like it's still to this day. And I think everybody goes through it. It's short, but you know.
It's short, but it's like the impact is like, you know, you'll feel it for the rest of your career. So
pretty much. Yeah.
And speaking of, your career is so exciting to watch. Let's get you out of horror films. I can't wait to see what you do next, you know, outside of that world. Hopefully you have something cooking, but come see me in LA. Let's do a seminar. Let's talk to the new kids.
Yeah. Nice to talk to you, Chris. Yeah. I'll hit you up when I head over.
All right, man. Thanks for your time. Have a great night.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the After Film School podcast. If you're interested in supporting the show, please reach out to us. For more information and to join the conversation, visit our group Telegram channel, After Film School Podcast, where you can ask follow-up questions and engage with our community. The link is in the description. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at After Film School Podcast. We truly appreciate your support and look forward to connecting with you again soon. With gratitude, the After Film School podcast team, Chris and Renee.